Hello, hello. Hi everyone. Can you see me? Are we good to go?
Yes.
Fantastic. Welcome you people. It's been a minute. Those of you are joining us today on our different channels. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm glad to be back. It's been some time off, but here I am. And I'm glad to see Milton, glad to see Francis Kamuhanda, glad to see Albert Bakasara, Miriam Kyomugasho. Oh my God, you guys, I have missed you, but here we are. And we're going to dive right into the issues at hand. But maybe I would want to quickly alert us and tell us what's on ground here in Uganda. There's quite a lot happening as we gear up for 2026 general elections. You've heard certainly that the former presidential candidate, Dr. Kizza Besigye, was arrested in Nairobi. He's set to appear before court on the 2nd of December over funny charges. As usual, we shall delve into that. We have also been, the news indicates that there was a rainfall that happened in Bambuli, and there was flooding. Some people were submerged in the water. There's quite a lot happening here in Uganda. Bank of Uganda heist. I mean, who has the audacity and the capacity to rob the central bank of the country? We'll delve into that as well. There's so much, but I'm really curious about the transition in the US between Biden and Trump. Maybe I'll start with you, Albert. Could you paint a picture for us? What's happening as the transition starts? Maybe then after we can delve into what's happening in Uganda.
Hello, Lynn. How are you? How are you guys doing? Yes, so to your question on the transition in the US, this is an old country. The institutions work very well. I think you all saw that after the elections, the vice president conceded, and the president, President Biden, invited the former president and now President-elect Trump to come to the White House, and that took place seamlessly. The two gentlemen exchanged pleasantries. There was a little hesitancy in signing the formal paperwork that is needed in the transition. I think this week that was also done. So there's a difference between the rhetoric that many of you see and really what happens. And I think if our listeners or viewers can just use a little imagination, they could decipher the difference. For example, the former president is now elected, and he has all these changes that he proposes. Some of them he will be able to do by executive order or even having Congress go along. But it's not, the US presidency is not an everything and all kind of presidency like we have in many African countries. It's a presidency that is designed to work within the rule of law. It's a presidency that has checks and balances. For example, amidst all that was taking place in the elections, you'll be surprised to learn that the Democrats now will have at least 2 more seats than they had before the election. So out of the 435 seats, they will have 215, and Republicans will have 220. That is a very, very slim margin because the majority is 218. So if you think that people are sitting and there's no absentee voting in the House of Representatives, and there's no way you can have at every moment on every vote 435 people in sitting. Clearly, somebody's going to get sick. Somebody will have a graduation. So it's that kind of a dynamic that I want our listeners and viewers to envision. Secondly, then you'll have some of the proposals. I think Uganda and Ugandans will be interested in the immigration proposals. I think they will also work along the same lines. Because if you say that this will be, there will be a mass deportation of the likes no one has ever seen, but you also promised people that you will curb inflation and high prices, especially at the grocery stores. Those two do not align, because those same undocumented workers also do a lot of work behind the scenes that bring food to the tables of American families. So if you campaign on both, that you're going to bring the prices down and you're also going to do these mass deportations of almost 11 million people, those 11 million people are not camped somewhere. They're actually part of the economy. And you destabilize that in some uncoordinated and I don't have the right term, but if you do it haphazardly, it will definitely end up causing shocks in the economy, and then you'll be disappointing at least one segment of your electorate. So I want our people to think of it that way. Yes, I know America's a giant. When we sneeze here, people world over catch a cold. But relax. This is a country that has very strong institutions. The president has been elected. He is going to come in. He'll come in with a team of about 4,000 presidential appointees. But the rest of the people are the civil servants, who number about 2 million. And those are professionals who have been working. And we don't, I want to include myself in there, I'm a civil servant, but we don't really involve ourselves in politics that way. Yes, we comment, we vote, we participate, but once the election is over and we have our leader of the executive, that's the president we serve. And we do our work professionally and constitutionally. So
right.
People in Uganda should relax. America has a new president. And I would appeal to our foreign affairs and our government in power in Kampala to try to smooth relationships with the Trump administration. But again, in the context of knowing that this is an American administration, it will not be one that will be advancing or advocating for the interests of Uganda. It will be one advancing and advocating for the interests of the US, regardless of who is president.
Absolutely. And yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Albert. That has never changed. The US is always advocating for what matters to them. However, what matters is how we relate with them alongside their agenda. How I see that Uganda is very excited, first of all, about Trump, with a few some of the decisions he's come up with. And we look forward to how that will go. We can have another conversation over the transition, but later. Milton, I come to you. We have had quite interesting developments here in Uganda. We saw that Dr. Kizza Besigye was kidnapped, abducted. I don't know which word is right, because all the news sites and the news are saying kidnapped, abducted, arrested, all those things. So the question here is, he was arrested in Nairobi and eventually brought back to Uganda. He's set to appear before court on the 2nd. The question here would be, where does that leave us as two nations, Kenya and Uganda? Where is our standpoint? Because if he was arrested in Nairobi, on whose orders? Uganda, is Kenya resting our territorial integrity? Where does it fall? How do we relate moving forward? Because the opposition is making noise, Ugandans are making noise that was not right, that was not correct. How do we move from this?
All right, first of all, I want to also make a comment on the U.S. Election.
Right.
Unfortunately, we have somebody elected who does not respect these institutions, and therein lies the problem. I remember when he lost to Biden, he actually sent some of his goons to invade the U.S. Congress. And there's a potential danger because this guy now cannot run again. So he's a one-term president. He does not have to say, I need to behave because I want to be reelected. And the second problem is that he has brought people like Elon Musk essentially into his government. And these are people that believe only in cutting spending. And that is going to include social spending as well. So we will see definitely problem when it comes to social spending on education, when it comes to housing, and other people, and spending that benefits the non-elite. So essentially you have a government, you've always had a government of the elite in the United States anyway, because that's how the country works. Money essentially buys government, right? And now you have a collection of people who do not believe in any restraint in the private sector. So I see potential problems evolving over the next 4 years, but that's not the topic of today's discussion. So I will leave it at that for now. Now, going back to the issue of Besigye, of course, he could not be arrested in Kenya. The Kenyans said they have no idea how this operation materialized. And that's, of course, unbelievable. That's not credible. But nonetheless, since Ugandan operatives were involved, he could not have been arrested, quote unquote arrested, because Uganda does not have police jurisdiction in Kenya. So now what Kenya is seeing is the state terrorism that Ugandans have been enduring for 38 years now. The issue of kidnapping is nothing new to Ugandans. Since the 2021 elections, hundreds, thousands perhaps, of suspected supporters of the National Unity Platform, young people, have been kidnapped from the streets. That's not news. That's been reported by all the major media, including the New York Times, The Guardian, Al Jazeera, BBC, VOA, CNN. So it's nothing new. What is new now is that now General Museveni and General Muhoozi, the deputy dictator, they've exported the domestic terrorism to a neighboring country. And that, to me, the arrogance is just shocking, because now it's getting international coverage, including it was even brought up at the United Nations, where you have all the global media. That issue was also discussed and covered by global media. And now the question is, people are now going to be asking questions. What kind of country operates like this? And then they're going to be looking domestically and finding out that, aha, this is nothing new. Ugandans have been enduring this. Now they're seeing it transported to Kenya. And now here's the other major problem for Kenya as well. I don't know if you've been following, but in Kenya now is putting pressure on the government of William Ruto, not only from civil society, but from members of the Kenyan parliament and the Kenyan Senate as well. And they're asking him two questions. Number one, if you say you did not know of this operation, it means you really don't have our country secure. If you don't know that something like this could happen within Kenya. That's number one. Number two, if you knew and you were indeed a part of this operation, which to me is much more likely, it shows that you've now mortgaged Kenya's sovereignty to a neighboring country that is ruled by a military dictator. So that's the issue that Ruto will have to deal with.
Thank you, Milton, for that. You open our eyes to a more diplomatic issue at hand, because if the Kenyan government says it had no idea, but then the Ugandan government got into Kenya and arrested a Ugandan in Kenya.
Excuse me, I think we have to correct the term. You can't arrest somebody in a neighboring country. It's like saying Mexico sending police to the United States to, quote unquote, arrest somebody. No, so the words are very important. It's kidnapping.
Kidnapping. Right. Thank you for that. Now we move on and ask ourselves. Francis, I come to you. We have had several issues with the opposition in Uganda for a long time, and we still question ourselves. Remember, Besigye has been arrested over 1,000,000 times, for lack of a better expression. But the continued oppression of the opposition in Uganda, and as we gear up for the 2026 general elections, puts us in a very critical space as a country. That not it has been around. Okay, we've had this conversation before. We're talking about the opposition and the lack of it in Uganda. Still, where is the opposition in this? How do you approach what is happening to Besigye? And as a figure of the opposition, where are you? What do you say about all this?
Thank you, Lynn, and the other fellow panelists. And I want to say that the government of fishermen, headed by the chief fisherman, Museveni, is very catastrophic. And we have been sounding this for a long time, but like other countries thought it was a joke. And as we gear towards 2026, Museveni, who sometimes and his regime normally fear their own shadow, again is in full swing, trying to terrorize and intimidate Ugandans. So that at the end of the day, as people go into the election, they are already aware that, look, this is what I'm going to crack down on dissenting voices or people who believe in alternative government. This is how I'm going to deal with them. That's why you see the kidnapping that he was doing in Uganda was not enough. And then he follows even people, wherever they are in countries that he's not aware of the implication. Number one, his son once said that he can overrun Kenya within just a matter of seconds. Already this is showing, if he can go to Kenya, arrest somebody, then I have a reason to accept that Muhoozi, indeed what he was saying, had a backing from his father. They know what they are doing. Because if you go to a country where we agree we have what we call bilateral agreements, of which the extradition treaty is part of it, and then a due process is not followed, then it defeats my understanding. That's why you find that a similar approach that Museveni has used in Congo, that's why Uganda is paying. They go to Congo, they export violence to Congo, they go and vandalize, steal resources, and so on. But at the end of the day, we are the ones paying. South Sudan, name all these different countries. So this brings us as Uganda, it puts us in an awkward position, because if there is a war that happens in Uganda, we have made enough enemies of our neighboring countries that this is very catastrophic in its own sense. Then number two, there is nobody among the neighboring countries who trusts Uganda. And when we say who trusts Uganda, including we ourselves, the citizens, you go to Kenya, they will look at you as a terrorist has come. You go to Rwanda, it is even worse. You go to Congo, the same. Sudan, you know how Ugandans are witch hunted in South Sudan. But who brings all that? These are the tendencies of Museveni. And it is a pity that we always tell people, but our masses have not yet realized the implication of Museveni's regime and his actions. And I think it is a high time. I like the approach that Lukwago is taking to ensure that this should go even beyond the court of Uganda to the East African, even to maybe to African Union, which I don't believe that they do something. But also, like as how Allimadi has said, it has a negative implication on Ruto himself and his regime. And I don't know where this leaves him. Otherwise, you can't, if anything happens to Besigye, whether he's killed or something terrible happens to him, his blood will be on Kenya. Because since when did Uganda and UPDF and Museveni have jurisdiction all over the whole country? Our constitution, it has a mandate for the UPDF and the police. But now you hear the charges they are putting on him. So like right now, Lynn, I don't know whether you have asked government to say that you are hosting us. They will come for you. Because every meeting you have to ask for permission, whether you are holding it in Uganda or outside Uganda. For your information, even to inform that I'm traveling to the US, but I might end up meeting Allimadi. Am I allowed? Otherwise, if not, then you'll be arrested. So I think this level of handedness is, if you observe every other time when we are approaching elections, at least Museveni will use that to inculcate fear into the Ugandans, use force, begin cooking up cases that do not exist. And yet, Museveni and his son are the number one criminals in as far as what they have done to Uganda. So they are the ones who are supposed to be arrested, by the way. So I think that as the members who believe in alternative government that is straight, we have to pull up our socks to know that again 2026 is not going to become a straight path for us. But we will not stop. We will continue showing the dissatisfaction. We will continue showing how a government is supposed to operate and exercise our constitutional mandate as much as we can. I know time is on our side. Yes, Museveni might have the clock, as he may assume, but we have the time in our interest. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis, for that. I was earlier on reading, and some commentators were saying that this abduction is a sign to people whose opinions different from the Ugandan government, especially as we prepare for the general elections. And this seems to be a habit. I note that Amnesty International, the East African and Southern African regional director, is saying that Ugandan government has a track record of systematically cracking down on opposition political parties through abductions, arbitrary arrests, and unlawful detentions and trumped-up charges. And this, they say, is a chilling message. Albert, if we could take a look back at the far, his abduction marks 25 years since he stepped out of the shadows of the NRM and the Movement Party. Does this mean that arresting a very significant opposition figure in Uganda, he's been arrested quite a number of times, but as we prepare for the elections, is this now, are they indeed sending a message to other opposition leaders? What would you make of this?
Well, it's interesting that we're coming full circle. We started this conversation with American politics, and now we're going on to Uganda. All I can say in an attempt to answer this difficult question of yours, all I can say is that these things have a cost. The reputation of the country, the cost of borrowing. Yeah, because when you make Uganda unstable unnecessarily, we depend on foreign loans. It's going to cost us. And again, we started this conversation with the US and me appealing to Uganda to make sure that they develop a different relationship with this re-elected former president. those are some of the things that they will have to do. Just because the Ugandan government did not get along well with the Biden administration does not mean that the folks that are going to work in State Department under the Trump administration are somehow going to change US law or how it views human rights, on how it views the Anti-Homosexual Act that was passed. None of that is going to change. And I'll give you an antidote. The president has recently nominated an openly gay billionaire to be the Secretary of the Treasury. That's the equivalent of the Minister of Commerce in Uganda. That is a very, very powerful position. That's the department that is in charge of sanctions that have been imposed on some of Ugandan officials. Because I think I saw one Twitter from one high-ranking government official saying, "Oh, Biden is gone, sanctions are gone," and I'm like, "Wow, that's a premature cheering and jubilation." Well, you're going to have an openly gay man who is going to head that. And if your sanctions were put on you for persecuting gays in Uganda, I don't think you're going to fall in favor with the gentleman. So those are some of the nuances that Uganda can learn. The government has had the same characters for a long, long time. And that's the difference that you see with the US elections and bringing in new people. Because it's not just the president that changes. Like I said, the president comes in with about 4,000 presidential appointees. They will change, they even change the city. Okay, the city for those 4 years changes. The lobbyist changes. I mean, people change. And sometimes the direction of the country changes in those 4 years. So in Uganda, we don't have that luxury where government changes and you have a whole class of new people changing ideology, tactics, and all that. That's why we're still debating abductions and kidnappings and arrests of political opponents because the characters have not changed. In my humble opinion, I still think this government acts like they're still guerrillas, like an opposition government. And sometimes they even forget that they're the government in power. Because honestly, there is no need to go pick up a guy who is just visiting and returning home. There's really no need. I don't even care. I don't even want to give them credit to say, "Oh, this is the way to intimidate the opposition." You can do that in several other ways. And the government of Uganda has not shied away from doing that. I just think that sometimes there are knee-jerk reactions, bad intelligence, and seriously, bad advice. And sometimes it's being stuck in the past. And if you're not changing people, like I said, if new people are not coming in and old people getting out, if you don't have that revolving door to refresh and bring in new ideas, you're going to go back to the old tricks. And that's what is happening. And it's unfortunate, again, like I said, because there is a cost. There's a cost for the country's reputation. There's a cost for especially borrowing, since Uganda depends so much on borrowing. I think the arrest of Besigye may not seem a lot. It may not seem too much for some of those regime diehards. But I think somebody should put it in numbers and say, okay, when we were looking for this loan, what was the cost of borrowing before we did this bad news, before we did this bad act? And some economics at Makerere should do that. Quantify this stuff for the head of states to say, Mr. President, you just cost us a couple of $2 billion. Or if it was just a knee-jerk reaction by some security official, you call them and show them the economic impact of things like this. We need positive stories. And now, like I said, in the US, we have a new administration coming in January. It's incumbent upon Uganda to do a good impression on the Trump administration. And if anybody has learned anything about Mr. Trump, you get one shot at impressing him. You start on the wrong foot, you may never be able to get to the right foot. Yes, I've finished my submission. You missed part of it, but I will continue. Thank you.
Again, it's time to rain, and so our internet now having challenges. That's Uganda for you. Now I see Miriam, you're here. I want to throw this at you. Political analysts were saying that this rather abduction and subsequent arrest could bring him back into the political spotlight. If you remember, he's back. He's been taking a back seat. So they're saying this could bring him back into the political spotlight and support potentially divide the opposition support and also the NUP, had some
I think is
you may want to mute the good professor.
I'm sorry.
No, I don't have any music in my background.
It's mine. I'm sorry. I think someone is passing by with some noise. I was gonna say that it's not. I mean, it's nowhere here, nowhere there. Oh my gosh. Maybe someone can chip in as I organize my background. It's noisy. Sorry.
We can hear you.
Can hear me?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I was saying that the NUB, saying that Museveni is trying to bring message in the politics. I think it's nowhere here, nowhere there. I think Museveni wouldn't be fighting Besigye if he doesn't think that Besigye is not a threat to his politics. We know him. Anybody who maybe there is something he knows about him which we don't know, or but for me, my guess is we have seen a lot of quarrels inside FDC, and they were coming from State House. The allegations that State House is trying to buy off the party and its membership. So when maybe Besigye and group averted that, then maybe Seven felt that he wasn't able to subdue the guys and his plan B of sorts. But it's very unfortunate, and the most unfortunate part is that Kenya, which used to be a political refugee of most of the political asylees who were running away from oppression from Uganda, now is a party to the dictatorship. And I didn't hear the other question you asked, Lynn, so let me stop there. Maybe you can repeat some of it. Is Lynn on? It's not muted. She's muted. It's not easy to communicate in Uganda.
Yeah, she's muted.
Lynn, are you? Yes.
Apology, I'm here.
I didn't hear your second question. If you can repeat the last
What
one.
I was saying is, do you think there's a possibility that this could maybe draw Dr. Kizza Besigye back into the political spotlight?
It's not that he wasn't in the spotlight. I mean, maybe being at the forefront. But if the president is thinking that Kizza Besigye is a threat, then definitely he is. And maybe there is a lot he's doing on ground that we are not aware, and this is a sign that indeed, because we all know, I mean, after 40 years, Museveni is very predictable. We know he can't go for anybody who is not a threat to his game. And we have seen what has been going on. FDC was trying to reorganize after it was disorganized a bit. And that's what everyone was looking forward to. And it's only FDC. If you follow parliamentary proceedings, it's only FDC members, whether they aligned, people who are aligned to FDC, the former and etc. So NUP is a young party. Sometimes I think they are strong, but they are not so well versed with Museveni's politics. that the FDC leadership, the veterans, are still holding the fort as far as opposition is concerned. They are the ones who challenge the regime in upholding the rule of law. They challenge them as far as policy is concerned. So if Museveni perceives him as a threat, then I think we are the one who are behind the news. It's high time to consider him as a Museveni's challenger and maybe give him all the due support he needs. Because right now what we need is a leader. Whether he comes in the shape of Besigye or Bobby Wine or whoever, or another new person, all we need is opposition uniting under a leadership which is strong enough to bring the change we want.
Right. Because political analysts were actually saying maybe this time round we might see him come back as a political candidate, as an election candidate come 2026. So we'll look forward. I don't know if that is going to go well or if they're just predicting a possibility. Now, when I come back to you, Milton, with all that has been said about the abduction of Dr. Kizza Besigye and the subsequent arrest as he prepares to appear before court on 2nd December, I want us to wrap it up because I want us to look at other two issues that are in Uganda. Where does this leave, one, the opposition in Uganda? What does this say about the government right now? And as we prepare for elections, really, is this how we start as a country, as we have only 1 year to go? Is this what we should be doing as a country right now?
Well, with all due respect, we should not even say we as a country. This is the actions of a military dictator of 38 years. Obviously, we as Ugandans do not condone this type of activity. So we should not even associate ourselves with it. It's very damaging, much more significant than any of the people that work with the dictator than the dictator himself. As my colleague pointed out, in terms of the international impact, it's just tremendous. Who's sitting there? First of all, he's not getting any more money from the World Bank since the World Bank suspended new loans. They've been negotiating with the IMF for several months now, and that negotiation apparently was not going well. And now those officials and those members of the board of the IMF are going to be reading about this abduction, a kidnapping of a significant figure, whose wife, by the way, is a senior official at the United Nations, the executive director of UNAIDS. And in fact, that's why the UN made a quick statement about that issue. So they're going to be reading all this. And then the CEO of Total Energies, which is investing in that oil pipeline, and the members of the board of directors of Total Energies, they're going to be reading that story as well. So I think my colleague is correct. Not only is it going to raise the cost of borrowing, it's actually going to eliminate the possibility of new borrowing, in my estimate. That's what I would like to say in conclusion about this matter, so we can move on to other issues.
Right. Thank you very much, Milton. The other issue that is quite sticky and very interesting is that the Bank of Uganda, I don't know what to call it. It was some money was taken out of it. I'm saying some money because some people are saying it's not a lot of money. So there was a heist of sorts. The government admits it lost about billions, about 60 billion thereabout of Uganda shillings at the central bank. And I will start with you, Albert, because you're a man of maths and the likes. Really, first of all, let's paint a picture. How does the central bank allow this to happen? We've been having, by the way, a few issues with different banks. There have been lots of money laundering, money being stolen abnormally in strange ways. So Albert, I ask, really the Central Bank of Uganda, how do we allow this to happen?
Really is the perfect term, but with a question mark, really? Because honestly, how does it even happen? It's like this is stuff of science fiction. I personally do not believe it. And I'm surprised you're saying a little money because in the economy of Uganda, 15 to 7, what is it, depending on the exchange rate, that's about 17 to 19 million US dollars. That's a lot of
16, yeah, 16 US dollars, rather million US dollars. And
that's a lot. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Because I have seen bank application loan, World Bank loans of what, 60 million. So that would be what I mean, a third of that loan for roads and all. 16 million is a lot of money for a country like Uganda. It's a lot of money. So yes, that people might have that money stashed away in their foreign accounts and all that kind of stuff, and they might look at it that it's not a lot of money, but it is in the economy of Uganda. It is. Okay, that could revitalize institutions like Mulago, Makerere. It could actually do it could even do an anchor project, a development project right there in the middle of the city. 16 million is a lot of money. How does it go missing? Well, I seem to remember, and you guys can correct me, I seem to remember a similar scandal prior to a previous election, where I think it was a rented jet that was supposed to transport money out of Europe into Uganda. I think this was before the governor passed away. And it was alleged that on that plane, some people added on cargo. Rumors were that that cargo were also other pellets of money. And of course, there were investigations, there were news articles written, and then after that, everything went away. Like it is the habit in Uganda. Journalists get excited about something, no one goes back to do an expose, no culprits are put in jail, nothing. So this 16 million thing will go away as well, because I do not believe that Bank of Uganda was hacked. I do not believe that. But maybe the investigations will prove me wrong, but I don't believe that. I think money went somewhere and somebody has answers, whether they're giving them. I don't even want to speculate, because this is the stuff that gets people in trouble. I don't even want to speculate. I just don't believe it. I mean, nobody can force me to believe it. I don't believe that this money was hacked somehow. Why now? Why now? If the hackers have been active for years and years and years, if Bank of Uganda was that vulnerable, it would have been hacked a long time ago. It wouldn't be now. Okay, so I don't believe that this was a heist. A hacker or anything. I think money is in there. No, somebody knows where its whereabouts, whether they're talking or whether they will talk or not. That's another story.
Right.
So that's my answer on that.
Right, Albert, I get you. Francis, so it is funny. Now, when we see the junior finance minister, when he was tasked with the question as to what happened in Parliament on Friday, yesterday, he said, "I wish to state that it is true that our accounts were hacked into, but not to the extent of what is being reported." And he goes on to say, when this happened, we instituted an audit and at the same time an investigation. The Auditor General is doing the audit, and CID, that is the Criminal Investigations Department of the police, at the same time is doing an investigation. So we are asking ourselves, really, surely, and I know, Francis, we've hinted on this in our conversations before. We've gone 3 years without a governor, Bank of Uganda, and people are actually, the sections of the populace is saying this could be because maybe we do not have a stable leadership at the bank.
Well, thank you, Lynn. Time and again, we have always said that it's by God's grace that Uganda as a country, we are moving, either because we, the Ugandans, are resilient, but there is completely total failure of government institutions. And whenever we would sound this bell, people would think we are alarmists and we are just making noise and stuff like that. But I'm glad that every other time people are seeing what we have been talking about. You are aware that Museveni, the person who used to rob us and takes money in sacks to give out on a rally to people. That was followed by, you have seen how his cabinet, they would also carry money giving it out. The recent concluded election, you saw how the politics of Museveni has taken root, the packet of salt politics. So, in other words, there has been this trend that you have to steal as much as you can. You saw recently when he was moving around that he's looking at the parish development model. It was the minister development model. Each minister was parading what they have stolen from Ugandans in terms of their farms and stuff like that. So, to me, it is not a surprise that now that they have stolen all what exists, now they say, what do we need to do? Let's begin organizing stunts. But these stunts, if you can go right away from when we started the elections, before an election, there is always something similar to this related to money. I will give you an example that the recent concluded election, that's when we had that the plane had gone to bring money. No, he first started by saying that he wants to print money from Uganda. And when that failed, then they go and print money from outside, and then people print and add in their own money so that it comes. So all this towards an election. Now, if let us assume that indeed these were hackers, what does it show? Uganda has learned nothing in as far as where we are heading. In as far as advancement in technology, I'm not saying that even these countries that are advanced in technology, they can't be hacked. But for the case of Uganda, if we have the firewall, generally that is managed by 2 or 3 or 5 people, I don't know the structure, that it would be like, in a layman's language, I would say some kind of gates that for such a transaction to go through, almost like 5 gates or 10 should be open. And they are not opened by one person. So what happened? Lynn, if you dig deeper, it was by coincidence that there was a training that the Bank of Uganda officials are undergoing a training like related to cyber security. And so all these have to be dug out. And then number 2, what is
short. Sorry to cut you short. When you mentioned they're undergoing a training, does this mean this was maybe a drill, perhaps, and somehow they were trying to see how to avert it, and somehow the money disappeared?
No, that's how they wanted. They were giving an opening, a fissure for somebody who this. I'm telling you, this is highly likely to be an insider job. But also another hint. Then there comes a report. I'm not sure how sure it is, the preliminary investigation that we managed to retrieve half of it. Was it that it is on the way walking and you intercepted someone, it came back, and yet it is like one wire? So all these are clues that are showing you that these people, if you go and then number 2, you go and see from the ministry and even Bank of Uganda, why do you begin coming? Oh, it's not me. Another one, it's not me. Another one, it's not me. You really see that there is some kind of tremble. And to me, I believe that an investigation, but the problem that I have with investigation is in Uganda. An investigation is another fraud. Don't get surprised, Lynn, that they will tell you that they used 100 billions to investigate 660 billion that they are talking of. So that is where my worry is. But then again, we may never see a report that will come out. So it is important then that we can learn that there should be investment in technology, in advancement in technology. But also at the same time, we should not forget that this type of scandals always happen towards an election. And very fast, how they rushed to say that it is the West, Eastern Asia, and I don't know even how they came up with that kind of name and so on. So it is important that we get to know exactly what happened. By now, you should have heard that maybe the leader of the bank or whoever has stepped aside, but zero. If they arrested the leaders of KCCA because of negligence, what about Bank of Uganda? And you hinted on which country in the world, you know that the bank or the central bank is the national treasury. Because number one, it should be holding money for other banks, even the legal reserve requirement, it is kept in those banks, that it can run for years without the bank, the governor of a bank. But of course, it is always the work of Museveni that he's almost everything. You may find he's the one indirectly working currently as the governor, Bank of Uganda, as how he has done and suffocated other different departments and institutions that everywhere now he moves there in his pocket. Generally, the first investigation should begin from State House. To me, that's how I would look at it. Yes, I would first say, if we entrusted you, if the Ugandans entrusted you with securing the borders, securing our constitution, ensuring that everything is good, because some of the Ugandans, their money is in the Bank of Uganda. Provided we put in commercial banks, it will end up at least knowing that Bank of Uganda is overseeing. And then you have neglected this responsibility. Somebody can just come and enter and steal if indeed it was stolen. Then it is Museveni who has failed. And therefore, it is Museveni who should be investigated first, and then they go to these other cadres that he has been electing, moving down. Thank you.
Right. Thank you very much, Francis, for that. Actually, there's lots of information that keeps coming in and very different about this whole saga. Now, according to Daily Monitor sources, they're revealing that sometime back in August, about 13 million US dollars, that is 47.8 million Uganda shillings, was also went missing. That is billion, I beg your pardon, went missing, and it was taken out of the bank. Now we have 17 million US dollars also somehow disappeared, apparently paying some foreigners, I don't know for what. Now we have seen a continuous trend of this is Bank of Uganda is really close to many Ugandans. But when you look at commercial banks, we've seen stories over and over of how there's been a haste here, Commercial Bank Z, Commercial Bank A, and this continues to, over the years, does not make sense. Now, if I could ask you, Miriam, I want to ask, and one, really, as a country, first of all, we do not have we have an acting Bank of Uganda governor. We have, over the years, the banks have instituted security measures to curb cybercrime, because we've seen that happen over and over. And we know that if money goes missing from the Bank of Uganda, that's a security issue. Francis is blaming the State House. Speaker of Parliament is saying, let's wait for conclusive results from the investigation. Ugandans are stranded. They don't know what's happening. What do you make of this?
I think Ugandans are right to suspect insider job, and even all the information being given out shows, like there was some collusion from within inside, because this is not the first time, like you have highlighted a few incidences back. I mean, we could have lost money. Yeah, maybe this is the first time there is like wire transfer, money being lost in that way. But we have even have leaders being sanctioned for money laundering. So it's not the first time that we lose money, even in the Bank of Uganda, because we know. I don't have a specific incident quote on that, but we know that the Bank of Uganda, we like joking that it's the ATM of the State House. Like, they pick their money whenever they want. They push money around for projects and do funny stuff for politics and all that. And sometimes even when the budget is always shuffled around several times, and then there is the classified accounts, we have the consolidated fund. Nobody ever counts for any of the money goes over there. And if you look at the audit reports we get annually, they have a long story to talk about when it comes to losing money, taxpayers' money in such a way. But this incident stands out in a way. Maybe someone pointed a finger and then they had to come out and say it. Like you said, if you read articles, they date way back in several weeks back and months back, as in August. So maybe someone said, hey, you have to tell what is going on, and maybe they felt that they should come out and tell the public that money is being lost. But we know, I mean, we assume there is a reason, and not a good one, why the president is not appointing a governor for Bank of Uganda. And it's coming 3 years ever since the demise of the late governor Tumusiime Mutebire. There is no any substantial reason why we can't have a governor for Bank of Uganda. And you leave space somewhere when you want to exploit that space for funny reasons. Otherwise, Bank of Uganda is a national bank, regulator for all banks. That's a very important institution in the economy. There is no way you can leave it vacant for all this long unless you have sinister motives. So the backstay ends with the big guy at State House, and it's unfortunate because all this money being swindled is taxpayers' money. And we know the people who take this money will never pay back, will never be apprehended, will never be punished. They're going to get a few scapegoats here and there and then cover up. And they want us to move on as business as usual. But this is taxpayers' money. Today, we were looking at people who lost their lives in Bududa, in Bambuli, in Mbale. 100 people suspected to have died, in addition to 30 bodies they have already discovered. So almost 200 people who have lost their lives, and no, they say no funding. You can't resettle such a people because they don't have money. I saw the Minister of Disaster Preparedness said they don't have a budget. But we have had incidents. We had Stacy where more than 100 people lost their lives or got injured. And then we are having this on the heel of that a few months back later. And still the Ministry of Disaster Preparedness tells you they don't have a budget. But here we are. We have money being swindled left and right, and people think it's a joke. They say that laundering money in Uganda, now it's like Uganda is the former Nigeria. Nigeria used to be known for money laundering across Africa. So now we took over from that. But it has very big implications. If you can launder money from the Bank of Uganda, who's going to trust you for investment? Today, I saw someone who works in a different commercial bank saying that, guys, do you know that the Bank of Uganda only guarantees 10 million of your deposits in case a bank goes under, like that? So now are people going to take their money from the banks and start putting them in the mattresses? The Bank of Uganda, which is supposed to be supervising all the banking, the commercial banking sector. Recently, we saw fake money at Posta Bank. So maybe lack of supervision. Are they also taking advantage of those gaps in the leadership and of the supervising body? And then someone was telling me there is also an incident where there is conflict of interest. The Bank of Uganda, surprisingly, is very active in appointing the board, but they are very silent on appointing the governor. So they picked someone who happens to be still an acting, I think he's serving in another bank of a private bank and put him on the board in the Bank of Uganda, which is a conflict of interest. And they raised that issue, but people kept silent. I think he's being pushed, he's being moved over there for the same reason, someone who's going to cover your back, whether he's legally right to be there or not. So if you see compromises at that level, if we can't keep if nobody is there to supervise the economy, and that's the only last thing that people of Uganda have. The politics have gone to the dogs, and people are just hanging on because the economy somehow is working for a few, but still working. We can at least see the foreign exchange has been stable for some time. And maybe that would attract one or two investors to come in and invest in Uganda. But now all these stories flying around about the flood, the wire transfers, who's going to trust the Uganda economy for investment in the future?
Right, right. And I want to begin from there and ask Milton. Milton, first of all, quickly, let me take us through a few of the scandals that have rocked Bank of Uganda. In 2011, there was 5 billion bicycle scandal. It was accused of enabling the loss of the 5 billion. 2011, again, 740 million US dollars for fighter jets, if you remember. Then there was also a 142 billion Uganda shillings Basaja Balaba case. There was a scandal in 2019 of a currency saga. I think we've hinted on that one. Then November 6th, the theft of old notes. This is this month, actually, as we are closing this month. On November 6th, the Anti-Corruption Court sentenced the former head of verification at Bank of Uganda for stealing old currency notes that were meant for destruction. So there's been a lot going on with the bank and, of course, other commercial banks and generally. And so does this, Milton, I ask, does this mean that we should question our monetary system as a country? Or is it more leaning to
No, it means we should question the head of the fish in the country.
Right.
As they say, the old saying goes, the fish rots from the top. It means the entire body is also rotten. So it's unfair to scapegoat the Bank of Uganda. That would be scapegoating. This is just one example of malfunctioning institutions. So today we're discussing Bank of Uganda. A couple of years ago, we were discussing ministers stealing mabati that were meant for the impoverished people in Karamoja. We are seeing the signs of a malfunctioning state because we have one ruler, by the way, illegitimate. That's why I never refer to him as the president. That would just be endorsing election theft. You know, you steal from Bobby Wine, you steal from Kizza Besigye, and you swear yourself in as president. And then everybody starts calling you president, and then they legitimize your theft, and they condone election theft. So that's why I never refer to this man as president of Uganda. Ruler, yes, because if you have power over the police, over the armed forces, you can rule. So yes, he's the ruler of Uganda, but he's a military dictator. So all these are just symptoms. Next week, the week after that, we'll be discussing decay, evidence of decay in other Ugandan institutions. But I do want to say something specific about the Bank of Uganda. And I agree with both Albert and Francis that this is not the true story. And the true story will come out. The true story may suggest that the bank has been used to launder significant sums of money way beyond the 16 million, which I agree also again with Albert is a lot of money relative to the size of Uganda's economy. But I think this is the tip of the iceberg. And I think perhaps so much is already leaking out that they've started a public relations campaign to prepare us for what is to come. I think we're going to get bigger stories coming out of the bank And then we're going to get that connection to other institutions, because the bank, of course, is associated with many other institutions of the state. So I think that's the danger. I fear of what is coming in Uganda. But I think we as conscious people, as Ugandans, whatever you are right now, whether in Uganda or outside Uganda, we need to take our country seriously. We need to take the lives of young Ugandans seriously and the next generation. It is obvious that many of these problems, and that's why I say it's not fair to just focus on one institution, is because we have one individual and his collective inner core that have hijacked the state for 38 years. Are we going to allow him to hijack it for another 5 years come the next election? And if you're a serious person, if you care about Uganda, I think the answer should be absolutely no. So to me, the most important question is, are you doing everything in your capabilities to make sure that Uganda goes back to constitutional rule? We have a constitution. Yes, it's been raped multiple times, but we can restore all the elements of that constitution. In fact, the argument was that they went to the bush, they fought, they shed blood because they wanted rule of law in Uganda, right? So accept the argument. You know, some people say, well, you were involved in many of the killings that you then blame the state, blah, blah, blah. All that is water under the bridge. You arrived at a certain state and you brought a constitutional convention and came out with a constitution that the preamble, if you read the beginning, it says that it is because of experience of dictatorship. That is why we've come up with this new constitution. And then you go ahead and you start shredding that same constitution. So Ugandans, if I'm to make a plea to other Ugandans, regardless of the political affiliation that you have, our interest should be in restoring the constitution, the full constitution, the vibrant constitution of Uganda, because then that can protect all of us, regardless of which party you support. So implicit in what I'm saying is this: all the political parties in Uganda, if they're going to participate in the next election, come together and overwhelmingly demonstrate to the country, to the world, that this man has been vanquished by the electoral process. And then after that, you can go back to contesting your individual agenda and manifestos. But if you allow this dictatorship to continue in Uganda, then you are just as much to blame for the destruction of Uganda as the dictator of Uganda himself.
Right. Okay, thank you, Milton, for that. Now, Albert, I want to ask, but let me give you this. Hackers have, I think should have been last year or something, they penetrated some different commercial banks world over, and they sent a ransomware. So the question here is, they continue to penetrate legacy network firewalls of commercial banks and telecom companies that transact on internet-enabled platforms, but are yet to be upgraded with ransomware that evades detection and circumvent firewalls. Now, we have a cybersecurity department at the CID, and they're saying that in the last 12 months, we have lost about 11 billion shillings to such hacks, alleged hacks. And as we have been having this conversation, you've all alleged to an inside job, and so are Ugandans. Are we trying are we in denial of the fact that actually these hacks could be existent?
No, we're not in denial. And hacks do happen, for God's sake. I mean, there've even been attempts here at very highly sensitive intelligence operations and the Pentagon and the others. Hacks do happen. So it's not the hacks per se. It is what you do after you've gone from the first one, the second one, the third one, and now we're on to what, the fifth one? That's where the problem comes in. That's where the trust is lost with the Ugandan people. And it's not, by the way, just the Ugandan people. Uganda is not, the banking of Uganda does not exist in isolation. These banks do international transfers. And here in the US, which has actually revolutionized the banking laws in fear that some of these banking transactions could fuel and support terrorism. Most of the hard banking laws you have in Uganda are a result of 9/11 and the reforms that the US instituted world over and forced allies and now almost everybody to follow these strict rules. You can get a pass as Uganda and say, oh, they've lost some money. But if you keep doing that, it will not take that long before the US and the other global partners kick you out of their banking system. And these are the costs that we've been talking from the beginning we started this conversation. It will not be that long. And if that happens, then where do we go? So this has to be treated as an urgent matter by the government, and the loopholes have to be closed. And the president should wake up and really institute a substantial governor of that institution. Somebody that can be held accountable. Somebody who is good. Somebody who's not one of these loyal cadres, as Kamuhanda calls them, fishermen or fisherwomen. No, it should be somebody who is substantial, somebody who is knowledgeable, somebody who is a reformer to govern that institution. Because if these incidents keep happening without the government of Uganda taking any actions or some mediocre actions, you will raise the ire of the US. Because the fear here is that this money could find its way to fund terrorism. That is the biggest fear here. So they will not hesitate to kick Uganda out of that banking network. And when that happens, everybody suffers. We suffer, our families suffer back home, you guys suffer, the country suffers. Then we have something else. Then we become a failed state like the Somalis and the others. So can we head this off? Yes, we can. I mean, look, I've praised Museveni in the past and people said, you're crazy. I think he's one of the most brilliant strategic thinker on that continent. If only that effort and that energy and that brilliance had been designed and dedicated to the improvement of life in Uganda fully, Uganda will be Switzerland. Because he's in power, he still have his marbles. Why wouldn't he have a substantial executive at the helm of Bank of Uganda for 3-4 years since Museveni died? That's a no-brainer. It's a huge institution. For whatever reason, which are political, most of the cases, that you want that the top job vacant, it's not worth it. It's not worth the risk to the country. It's not worth the implications. It's not worth the consequences that could come down at any moment. Again, we go back to the US elections. We're going to have a very different leadership. Very different. Again, I said the first impressions with Mr. Trump matter a lot. And that is going to be the attitude of his administration.
Right.
A gentleman is going to come in January. He will read reports about Uganda that pertain to the other nonsense that we've been dealing with for the last 2, 3, 4 years. And then on top of that, I say, oh, by the way, here's where else they're failing. Their bank, their national bank, is like an open gate to hackers the world over. And we don't even know where the money is going.
Right.
And that puts us in a very, very bad negotiating position. That is the first impression. The guy is going to come in on January 1st. He will be approved. And that's the report he will get about Uganda. Oh, in addition to the Anti-Homosexuality Act, because people who want to be in his good graces would want to highlight that to him, because that's his constituency. He's a member. Say, hey, by the way, we sanctioned them because of this, we sanctioned them. And, oh, they've also lost about 70, according to Lynn, they've lost about 70 something billion, the equivalent of $30 million, and they have no clue. And that's your first report with the incoming administration. Come on, these things can't be rocket science. We can see them coming. We are here. We're warning our people in Uganda. We're talking. Right. We're talking. It's not like we're quiet, because some people say, oh, if you knew that, why didn't you say anything? No, we actually have been talking. We talk to our people, our friends in government, we talk to our friends here at the embassy, we do talk. Do they do anything? Well, the public will judge, but these things are not rocket science. They're not that hard to imagine coming down the pipe. They're not really that hard. So I'll stop there.
All right. Thank you very much, Albert. Now, before I get to you, Francis, in the chat room, you mentioned Bank of Uganda wire robbery, Post Bank give out fake notes, G4 security runner with money, Standard Chartered threatened to close operations in Uganda. This shows there's money problems in the NRM. We can trust them. We can't trust them with anything. You're going to say, not until we put a stop to the habit of the head of state handpicking people to lead institutions who also handpick their relatives causes incompetence in the functioning and running of state affairs. Now, Francis, when we look at all this, as you've already highlighted, clearly we have a situation at hand in our economy. And when you mention handpicking, I think even if it were you would probably want to have somebody who you can count on. I don't want to think that he handpicks because of the incompetence levels, but I think he handpicks because he knows he can count on them, in my thinking. However, with this happening in our economy, and what Albert has said, what Milton has said, we are looking at a situation, at an economic problem in our country. First of all, we're going to see that as we head into the elections, there's going to be inflation, there's going to be a lot of trouble in the economy. Why don't we allow our economy to thrive? We know all these issues are capable of happening, but I feel like we are not doing enough to protect our economy.
Thank you, Lynn. I will not, again, the answer is what I have told you, that number one, if we look at the functioning of institutions, let's say, like right now they are saying they are going to do an investigation, right? Allimadi will correct me if I'm wrong. If you say you are going to elect somebody to be an intelligence officer, by default, that person should be intelligent. Number one, should have analytical skills, should either have critical thinking skills, should be able to synthesize information from different sources. So if we begin from there, do you want me to say that I should believe that the investigation that is going to be carried out will yield any results? Putting that aside, do you want me to believe, therefore, that going forward, or from where we have come from, we have been having very intelligent and critical people to plan for the country in positions where they are supposed to be? So all these, when you put them together, and now they come and compound to the mock president, Museveni is a mock president, you know. Do you know how many times he has been taken, I don't know, in the bush there, that he's going to open a standard gauge railway? Recently, I saw again he was standing, I don't know whether it was a picture or a statue or whatever, again being mocked. So the problem is having a mock president who is leading our country. And not until we try to solve that. That's where the crux of the matter is. That's where the biggest problem is. Lynn, if we have to move a country forward, Does Uganda lack human resource? The answer is no. Are human resources in Uganda well deployed? The answer is no. They are not well deployed. And therefore, these are the consequences now that we are doing what we are suffering. One, on this talk show, Albert had ever said that you convince him why he should go and get equity from whatever asset he has to come and invest it in Uganda. So how am I sure? You still remember again the president saying that, oh, these people who are stealing money, the ministers, they are lucky that they are stealing government money. They are not stealing people's money. You wait, we will catch them. Who in the world can reason like that? That money that belongs to government does not belong to the citizens. So this is only Museveni who can say that. That's why I have constantly said that the legacy of the NRM government is, number one, raping of the constitution of the Republic of Uganda. Number two, corruption and bribery. Number three, embezzlement and theft with impunity. Number four, the death and collapse of public institutions. Number five, decadence in the moral standards. That even at every level where you go, that's what Museveni has planted. Then, to crown it all, political persecution and abductions. So that is the things that we can remember about Museveni and his government. And that is what he has constantly, the agenda he has constantly pushed forward, not until it has sunk deeper into the community. Go right away from LC1 up to the highest office. It is this same thing. Now you saw of recent, he went into the luxury now of also celebrating birthdays, and then they are organizing functions that they are thanking him and so on. Wait a minute. Whose money are they spending on a given function? And then to make matters worse, Lynn, that even when such a scandal happens, they downplayed that it was not a lot of money. He was just crying for recently that the reason why he needs to rationalize some of to cut expenditure. But then, if you are saying that, but money is being siphoned through dubious means, which I still believe he's privy to as the Governor Bank of Uganda, because he's the Governor Bank of Uganda. So we still demand a lot of answers from Museveni and his regime, in as far as the responsibility that he says we gave him to ensure that all the assets of Ugandans, we have a stake, we are shareholders in Bank of Uganda, but this kind of negligence of the highest order, no, I don't think that we are going to continue tolerating this, because this is taking us a dangerous path. But what hurts me most is that as the common person, as we suffer, for him, even the little that is left within the coffers of the state, he keeps using it. For him, his lifestyle has never changed. For us, our lifestyle can change as we say, how do we manage with meager resources? For him, the extravagance has always remained constant, and in case it keeps on increasing and increasing. Right. For example, when he's talking of rationalization and so many other things, okay, they have robbed money. Has he reduced on the fleet of cars that he uses? Has he reduced on the expenses in State House and so on? So this hoodwinking of Ugandans to put up stunts whenever we are going into an election, we don't need it. And indeed, because he introduced the politics of money, leave alone these developed countries, like for example in the US, it's the electorate that will mobilize funds to fund an election so that they bring into power the policies and ideas they believe in. Whereas in Uganda, Museveni changed it the other way around. That instead he should make Ugandans paupers that they only get crumbs from that drop off from his table. And this kind of model has been replicated. That's why you see currently even the level and the quality of debate at the floor of parliament has degenerated, because some of the people that are being elected would not even qualify to come and collect firewood at a funeral in the village. But now they are the ones that everyone is coming up honorable. This is an abuse, even when people don't know what the meaning of the word honorable, and so on. So I still believe that all these scandals, one by one, if we link them, and if there was a transparency system, that a system that is very transparent, they would all be leading back to the office of the president and to the president himself. So that's why I still insist that the only way is Ugandans should not be hoodwinked. The only way we can finish all this, I'm not saying it is a one-day job that if Museveni goes today, everything will be right. There will be a cleaning exercise, because 40 years is a long period enough to have caused all this mayhem that you see around. And therefore, cleaning it would need men who have sound mind, men who have the resolve to ensure that they are building a nation that will be passed on from one generation to another, and who would build a democratic institution that indeed instills morals and makes people love their country, and the country works for everyone, not for a few selected individuals at the expense of all of us. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Francis, for that. And now I want to give Milton a minute. I'm sorry, Miriam, because he says he wants to step out. Milton, with all this that is happening to us as a country, and you said we should stop saying us as a country because of other reasons. We are looking at things getting out of hand, and we might be sitting and looking on. But if you could quickly give your comment and we proceed, maybe your concluding remark as you step out.
Yeah, unfortunately, I had another engagement that I changed for 9:30, and it's already past 9:30. So I'll just have to make my final comments. But this has been very productive discussion. But I have to just agree with Francis again, because it echoes what I've been saying. What we're seeing are just manifestations of, and it's not a Ugandan problem per se, to be honest with you. So this is how I would like to conclude my own comments. This is an issue that many African countries suffer from. So when we read stories in Kenya, in Tanzania, in Ghana, in Nigeria, they're common themes. They're like, we know what's going on in Nigeria because this is what's going on in Uganda. In other cases, it's much more extreme, of course. My Nigerian friends tell me, no way, you Ugandans, you're fools. There's no way would we tolerate one person 38 years in charge of a country. We just won't take it. But nevertheless, they still all have some common problems. And the common problem is that they're dependent countries, dependent economies, you see? They'll fail to transform their economies. They inherited from colonialism in the 1960s, and structurally, it is still the same. They produce what they call primary products or raw materials, whether it's agricultural, whether it's mineral, natural resources. They export it for cheap to the industrialized countries. Then they buy manufactured at greatly inflated prices exponentially relative to their income from their exports. So as a result, there's no production. If you look at Africa's share of trade compared to the 1960s, in fact, it's gone down. Population is going up. So we are having economic retrogression. There's no production. So even the quality of the corruption of what they're stealing becomes even diminished. And that is why we have whole ministers stealing Mabati. Think about that. A few decades ago, they would be stealing something of higher value and quality. When ministers of the state are reduced to stealing Mabati, that should tell you something. When we see the malfunction of the central bank, that should tell you something. All of that originates from economies that are dependent, that are not increasing their production capacity. And that is why the problems we see in Uganda are very similar to all other African countries. So I think I would like that to be my concluding comments today. I look forward to joining you and my colleagues on another episode. So comrades, all of you who participated, thank you for sharing the space with me today. Thank you very much.
All right. Thank you, Milton. We'll catch you there. All right. Quickly, Miriam, I come to you, and as we wind up on this conversation, because I want to speak a little bit about the Bambuli situation. Quickly, I have noticed that news is reporting that Interpol has joined investigations. Now, if I could break down, Interpol Uganda is headed by SCP, sorry about the noise, SCP Joseph Obwana, deputized by SCP Fred Enanga, if you remember, our former police spokesperson, and SCP Yusuf Sewanyana. There's a reason I'm breaking this down. Now, Obwana was deputy to now retired AIGP Grace Akulo, and when she was director CID. SCP Enanga once served as economic crime investigator and also spokesperson at CID, while SCP Sewanyana is an IT guru who until 3 months ago was director of police's ICT directorate. Now, with this under investigation, we have Interpol joining in on the drama. Conclusively, Miriam, where do we see this? Very many investigations not coming. We are not getting reports. And I foresee this as another one of those. But I would like to pick your mind on that.
Maybe to give them some credit, I saw them reporting like some money was recovered. But like you said, could this be like a PR job? Like Milton said, they're preparing us for more bad news, or it's just, like they are trying to whitewash a big mess and push it under the carpet. So they said they recovered some money and froze some accounts in UK and US. But if we know the financial systems in US and UK, they wouldn't. They themselves could be the ones who flagged the laundering. Like they say, where is this money going? Because they can't allow you to bring in any money that you can't explain, that you can't explain the sources and all that. So maybe they hold them accountable and they said, oh, we've been caught. Let's try to really do troubleshooting here. That's what I suspect, but that's me. And then, if they are doing something, it's not good enough already. And we see that if they were so active, the break-in wouldn't have happened in the first case. And secondly, it shouldn't take them this long even to track it. And thirdly, and more worse, they said that a lot of money which went to Asia and other countries can't be recovered. We still don't know how much that has been leaking out. We don't know where the problem is coming from because they are not giving us names. So if the thugs are inside the Bank of Uganda, the thuggery will definitely continue. And then the worst part is that the Bank of Uganda has no leadership. So it's like an open door to our coffers and we are all exposed.
Right. Absolutely. I agree with you. And interestingly, as I was reading earlier on, there was a breakdown of how this money was. Apparently, they agreed that it should be put under Kampala Waste Management. You can read some more about the breakdown of the investigation. But now, quickly, I want us to take a look at the landslides in Bambuli. It is being reported that about 20 so far 20 people have died. That is the death toll from the landslides, but also about 113 people are missing after these landslides in the Bambuli district. My biggest question to you today, and let me maybe break down a little bit. We also see that some people have been many people have been displaced. We are seeing that heavy rains, landslides that engulfed 6 villages in the mountainous district of Bambuli, about 280 kilometers east of Kampala. We are seeing that 700 people have been displaced by this, with 216 of those living temporarily at a neighboring school, while others were being housed by relatives. Now, the biggest question of the day on this particular issue is that why doesn't our government learn from previous disasters? Every time we have heavy rains around the same time between September and now and going forward, I mean, maybe December, we have drastic, disasters happening, especially in the eastern region. Why is it that our government, our country never learns from these issues? And I'll begin with you, Albert.
Why don't we learn from these tragedies? I think that is the question. I don't think anybody can answer that question. But I'm not even sure. I don't know that. I'll have to profess. I don't know the topography of Bambuli. So I'll answer this question in generalities. Clearly, climate change is a factor. The rapid growth of the population is another, which calls for proper government planning. By proper government planning, I'll take you to the west, where I come from. The trees on those beautiful mountains, Mount Rwenzori, are almost finished. Every time you drive around, take a drive to Bundibujo or Kasese, you'll meet truckloads of lumber along those roads. These are connected people who are cutting down these trees. And then when the rains come, those mountains are washed, especially if you look in the parts of Kasese. I can't tell you how many times those rivers have moved and flooded. Places like Kilembe have suffered, the residents are suffering. So it's the same scenario with Bambuli. We need to really start valuing the lives of our citizens. Ugandans' lives have to start mattering. Everything cannot be collateral damage to whatever little we think is progress. So that's the only appeal I can make. Because honestly, there should be some planning. The other time we were talking about a tragedy when you were away, Lynn, about a dump site burying people alive. How does that happen? And yes, I see some people are in courts of law, but I don't even think that the problem started with them or ended with them, but somebody got to pay the price and they happen to be the ones in the docket. But honestly, how does a dump site bury people? Because a dump site does not move overnight. It's a huge thing. You add on, you see it moving, inspectors go and come back. Over the years, why can't somebody say, you know what, this thing might kill those people out there and actually raise an alarm? So it's the same thing with Bambuli. I highly doubt that a mountain or a hill gets to move and bury people alive if people were paying attention and caring about each other. And by caring, I mean the people who are in responsible government jobs supposed to do that. Geologists, technocrats, whoever it is, even an LC5, LC2, there's got to be proper care that is taken for the functioning of a state where these tragedies cannot keep occurring day in and day out, and we just say, oh, we send prayers. No, people do not want prayers. They actually want to leave. These are families being devastated. Mm-hmm. This is economic activity killed.
Right.
So it impacts the nation. It impacts our growth, impacts our reputations internationally. You kind of look and say, Jesus, what did we do wrong? How can things keep going on? I mean, you're talking about Bambuli. Forget Bambuli. Look in Kampala. Every time there's a downpour, Kampala is like a big mud pool. And it's like, oh, really? with all the engineers, with all the education, with everything that we have as a resource, we don't live in a valley. We don't live in some rain or flood-prone area. We're actually living in a city of hills where God gave us a natural drainage. Water flows down into the valley, flows into Lake Victoria. And we still manage to flood Kampala every time there's a simple downpour. It's a tragedy, but we're resilient, we're Ugandans, and we keep hoping for a better future for our children and grandchildren.
Right. Thank you, Albert, for that. Francis, if I could pick a few from the Prime Minister's statement, she was, I beg your pardon, she was sympathizing and with the victims, and she said people are suspected to be missing on some field, buried by landslides, and she was calling upon people to beware of the disaster that was coming. And apparently rivers burst banks, schools were flooding, churches destroyed, and bridges also came down. And of course, this left communities isolated. Now, the military has been deployed to assist with the search and recovery efforts as usual. The military is always on hand. So if we Francis, if I could ask again the same question, we never seem to learn. Honestly speaking, for years, we've had these floods, these landslides happening in almost the same area in the eastern region of Uganda. Not, of course, forgetting that other areas also suffer some of these issues, but the eastern region has been hit hard. Why do we never learn? Is it so hard for us to plan for the eastern region? Is it so hard for us to prepare scientifically and otherwise? What is the biggest problem?
Thank you. The shortest answer, the biggest problem is lack of proactive leaders. Lynn, question number 2. In the 2024 PLE primary living examination, it was about how do you avoid such a disasters. You go look for a child who sat for primary living examination in Uganda. Now, if it means that from primary, this is taught in primary 3, how do we avoid such catastrophes?
Yes.
Now it means that as we advance, then children should be able to know that when you are planning for a country, the way how our curriculum is designed is in a way that you go on adding. When a child is in P3, studies about a sub-county. Okay, P1 studies about a family. P2, they study about a village. Okay. P3, they study about a sub-county. P4, a district. P5, Uganda. P6, East Africa. P7, Africa and the continents. So that's how it is structured, and the related problems at different levels and how they can be solved. So, meaning that Uganda is grounded enough in as far as identifying problems. Yesterday I was discussing with the children of P5 what they think about this very question, and they were giving me solutions. What should be done before? Now, for at our level and the office of the Prime Minister, the Minister of Disaster Preparedness, what kind of preparedness are they portraying? We have been talking over and over about climate change and saying climate change is real. So Uganda, what have they been doing? It goes back to leadership. And Albert has said it properly. Proper planning. I'll give you simple examples. For example, if you look at the road reserves, I have always given this example. Even where you reach, there is government land or a national park. The road reserve is still like 1 meter. And yet there we will see the road expanded even to around 6 lanes because they are compensating nobody. But it all boils down to lack of proper planning, either having wrong people in the wrong offices. But now, guess what, Lynn? Believe me, what has befallen, the death of Ugandans is a business to our political leaders. believe me, you will hear of how much money will be sunk in Bambuli. The other time you heard how much money was sunk in Kasese. And when the Prime Minister complained about the fake blankets that were supplied, she nearly lost her job. So because somebody behind had seen it as an opportunity. These problems can be solved, but the people in government, it is their business. And once you solve it, then you have stopped their business. They will not get an opportunity to embezzle as much as they can. That's why, like right now, since when did the UPDF become the people responsible for disaster preparedness? Now you see it's what they are revoking to go and help. They are technocrats in as far as war is concerned and securing our borders, but not securing us from landslides. This should be the Minister of Land, the Minister of Agriculture, and others. But you see the lack of exactly who is supposed to be doing what, and are they doing it in the proper way? So not until we go back and accept. Lynn, even if you have a very good team, but you get the person who is supposed to be a goalkeeper, you go and make him number 9. You get number 9 to become a goalkeeper or to go and play number 6 and so on. The whole system will be disorganized. But people who want to take advantage of a system or a situation to know that every season will be harvesting from here, that's what they do. They never solve a problem, even when a problem can be solved. I have told you, ask any Ugandan who has gone, even you, Lynn. I know in primary, you studied about this problem and how it can be avoided. So what is the problem? Is there rocket science? The answer is no. The will of our leaders. And as I have said, it's not until, because number one, we lack a system. If you want to make the leaders to hold them accountable, which they don't want, it becomes war. Like, for example, you had the war when Anita Mongo would go to unconsolidated funds and uses them as if she has been gifted by the Holy Spirit or by God, endless. When people would talk, it would be war. So we have to bring people, put them in the right offices, but the will should be the leadership will. Not until we change that, we may be, as I have always said, smartly addressed, going nowhere. But otherwise, it is a pity for people in Bambuli. It is a pity for people who are in areas that are prone to this, in Kampala and so on. So it's proper planning that we need. But proper planning can be done by people who understand what planning is and who are building a nation for today, for tomorrow, and for future generations to come, to know that what kind of country are we passing to our siblings, what passing to our children and great-grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Francis. Miriam, conclusively on the same issue, we are not learning. We seem, and Francis has painted a very fantastic picture. We learn about these things, primary, secondary, and even university. These things are taught. Even policies are made around these disaster issues. We have a whole department under the office of the Prime Minister, that undertakes disaster preparedness. What is the use of that? What is the use of disaster preparedness? Why do we wake up after these disasters have hit and we have lost lives?
I think, like Francis said, I mean, you can't get a disaster to prepare for another disaster. Our public officers take Ugandans for granted. The Ugandan lives are cheap for them, and every disaster for them is like a harvest season. That's where they see an opportunity to go and eat and steal more funds from the public. Like you said, the Bambuli, the landslides, even in Kasese and Albert's area, those regions have been prone to landslides, and it's known, and it's very easy to designate someone and say these people are going to be resettled in a certain area. You work with the local officials, you resettle families that are exposed, and you face off that area to ensure that rain or shine, people's lives are not endangered, like their Enogo area. Or maybe just let's do reverse. Let's put there national parks and we get national parks and put there people. Because it's very easy to move animals to a certain zone when it's rain season. And with the new technology, it's also easier to detect when the landslides are likely to occur. And the more rains, they even know where cracks have formed, like they can prepare ahead of time. I heard someone saying that in this case, people were told that the landslides were there and they were about to come. But I think the local people didn't have a choice, that they had their crops to harvest. And being a subsistence economy, when someone tells you that, says that they have crops to harvest, you might think, okay, that's just a crop. Why don't you let it be washed away? But that means a difference between supper and lunch the following day. People harvest as they eat. That's what they eat is in the garden. And if you say crops to harvest, that means if they move away, maybe they don't even have food and they might even die of famine. So all these point to the negligence at the administrative level, at the government level, the ministry. We have ministries of disaster preparedness doing nothing. We have, if that ministry is so useless, they should close it off. We know we don't have it. We have every other official concerned, and beyond that, we have the local officials. Every county, every village has a chairman from LOC 1, 2, 3 to 4. Why don't you get the local officers and say plan for your people? They know the people. They know the real reasons why people can't move at the grassroots level. I've never seen any government officials from Bambuli, local government officials, demonstrating at parliament that we want to move our people and you give us the money. Where are they? Why do they wait for death and burials? They know they are stakeholders in Uganda. Why don't they come and come to Kampala where these MPs sit and forget about them and demand accountability why they can't be moved to more safer areas or why they can't be protected as need be? It's very unfortunate, when they say we've lost, so far we've recovered 20 bodies, but 100 people are missing. My normal understanding is that adults can't go missing. You know you are home. You know how to go back home. So how can you be missing unless you are somewhere injured or dead? So when they say that people are missing, maybe those are bodies they are yet to recover. I heard they can't even take their excavators, that they are using handholds to try to recover the bodies, that the resources they have are not enough, and the local leaders are doing nothing. And to make matters worse, maybe to really mock Ugandans, every affected family is given 1 million for burial. That's what State House knows how to do. Give 1 million for burial. Why don't you instead correct that money and you transfer people before that disaster happens? And these military people, they like using the military people to excavate bodies. Why don't they instead use the military to chase people away from danger-prone areas? Because that one can work. If you put alternative place for resettlement and the people refuse to go there, go use the military or police or whoever is there to enforce the law, and they push people out the same way they push them from resource-rich areas, the same way they push them from national parks. They can also push them from disaster areas so that we don't continue to lose people in such a careless manner.
Absolutely. Thank you, Albert. Thank you, Miriam. Thank you, Francis, for your time. And of course, Milton in absentia. I want to thank you really for this conversation. But maybe slightly off a bit, I would like really to pick your mind on somebody just wrote a letter to Uganda Airlines. We've been having quite a number of issues. And this person is saying we really were looking forward to the revamping of this airline, but things seem to be going down south. high ticket prices, check-in experience is bad, boarding process is terrible. We're having in-flight amenities challenges and services. Marketing and communication is wanting. Ethical business practices down the drain. And I mean, there's a whole lot. So I want to pick your mind. If any of you has experienced the Uganda Airlines. Miriam, if you have, I don't know. But let me start with
I'm lucky enough not to have used the Uganda Airlines. I'm scared. However much I love it, I like the fact that we have an airline up in the skies flying our flag, but I kind of fear. I don't know. Maybe it's just a personal thing. The way we mismanage people, again, it goes to the issue of leadership. You all know how the person, the ED of Uganda Airlines, how she was contested, that she is underqualified for that position. And there's so many people she recruited under herself. So they say garbage in, garbage out in ICT talk, but that's the truth. You can't expect someone to outperform their capacity.
I have not had a chance to fly Uganda Airlines, but on a brighter note, everything else, of course, everything else doesn't usually go downhill at once. If I was to fly it, I'll probably fly the South African route because they happen to hire a good friend of mine who is a very capable leader. Her name is Monica Rubombora. She's now the area manager in South Africa. And I see her work, I see some of the things there, and we talk, and she names some of these challenges. But if I was to fly, that's the ticket I would buy on South Africa. But these ones flying to Dubai, Kenya, no, I will not fly on those. Because I know Monica, and I know she's a very capable leader. This is a global woman. She's worked for Deloitte and other big US companies. So I know she's capable, and I know her route is one of the best, and I've heard good things about it from actually other people besides herself. So that's the only ticket I would buy on Uganda Airlines if I was to fly it.
Oh, Albert, I would even say think twice. Yes, it's a good management on that route, but she doesn't manage the mechanical condition of the aircraft.
You're correct on that, but we're not. You're correct on that, but they were not really talking about mechanical conditions. They're mostly talking about the things being on time, the foods, the courtesy, the stuff. The usual things the things that really kill us as Ugandans are not really the big stuff. The planes are fine. They're actually new planes. They have a new fleet. The planes are fine. It's just the timing, the lateness, the courtesy. It's those little things.
Albert, if you visit somebody, the living room is dirty, you can't bet that the bedroom where they are going to make you sleep is clean.
Yeah, but if I see that the car is a 2024, even if it's dead, at least I will know the engine is safe.
Come on, Albert. Albert, let me tell you something. I've had stories from people who've used the airlines, and mechanical issues are our biggest challenge. Number two, they do not sit when there's a flight change. Nobody alerts anybody. Nobody sends out communications to say, by the way, due to ABCD, we have moved our flight from hour A to hour Z. Nothing. People just sit and wait. And Albert is saying they're new. The aircrafts apparently are second hand. Apparently, I don't know how to use
Yes.
I stand to be corrected here. The problem is, our biggest problem, indeed, as Francis says, we are smartly dressed going nowhere.
Albert, I have a colleague who used the Uganda Airlines. He said what saved him, he always moves with a rosary. So he had to comfort himself by praying the rosary. So
but you want to have time to pray in that emergency.
Matter, but it is.
I am going to have the people concerned listen to this segment. So,
I know one time you called them. Miriam, invite them and
Yeah, let's look for them.
Yeah, we want to see
I will at least have Monica listen to this. The ED is a very hard woman to get by. I know she's busy, but
Yeah, she is ever busy. She can't even appear on the big.
I understand, but I'll have Monica listen to this.
Oh, that's
and
where
if
we
she wants
lose the
to-
PR.
Please give us a feedback because we are. But
I will. I will.
Our planes fly.
And, Albert,
Okay.
as you communicate,
Yes, ma'am.
we are not saying this jokingly. We are
Yes.
not.
Oh, I know.
What we are trying to say is that we really are glad the airline was reprised, but the issue, can we address these seemingly small issues, because this is what is causing might cost us business as a country.
But
and
Lynn, I mean, I love us as Ugandans when we talk about these things, but none of this exists in a vacuum. If we are rotting, if somebody is literally walking in a central bank and taking $16 million out, then it's also a little disingenuous for us to expect everything else to be working perfectly.
You're right.
All right. Thank you. Allow me come to an end of this conversation. But as Albert, as we have discussed, as we head into the first.
I had a question for you, Lynn, before you go.
Right.
Obviously, they are bringing a duplicate conference of diasporans, similar to the one you and I attended in 2022.
Right.
Was it 2022? Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah.
So, will you be holding one of these conversations with some luminary diasporians to get their input and other things?
I think, Miriam, we can have a conversation on that, honestly.
Yes.
If we sat down with some diasporans and also the conveners of this conference, and address a few issues here and there.
You know, the funny thing, I see so many flyers, like the government is organizing more than 5 meetings for diaspora people almost in 1 week following the other. There is one of NRM something, there is one Office of the President, Ministry of Finance is organizing one, and I don't know what's going on.
According to your friend Brian, he says that we are hot cake, everyone wants a piece of us.
No,
I don't believe it.
This is
I don't believe it, but apparently the diasporans are in now.
Oh my gosh, the one we are in, I think someone sniffed off a budget vote somewhere and they are trying to share the cake. So the cake won't even reach.
They are looking for accountability.
All right.
What even reach
Miriam, I think we can look into it and see if we can have
we will talk to some people and see what's going on. And I wish we could tap the best out of it, but the way they are already disorganizing it, I'm becoming less optimistic about it. But let's be hopeful. In Uganda, the only thing you have is your hope. Otherwise, you can lose your mind.
And the rosary, according to Francis. Also, the issue of we have people coming into the country, but I think we need to have a conversation about the Uganda Airlines as well, as people jet into the country and fly around because of the holidays. All right, it's been a wonderful one. Have yourselves a lovely evening, good morning, and stay warm, those of you who are in cold spaces. Happy holidays.
Thanks so much, Lynn.
Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Lynn, and welcome back.
Yeah.
Thank you.